you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Good.
Good.
So we will get started in about a minute here. Um,
Yeah.
just so you know, the way I usually do this is we'll do the full live, and then I'll download it after. I'll cut out all the stuff at the beginning and the end that's just like, you know, us signing off and all the stuff. And I'll load it up on my YouTube podcast so you can share that later on for anybody that didn't get a chance to watch this or anybody you want to share it out to. Or you're even welcome to cut up sections of it if there's something you want to use as a sound bite or even a video bite, you're welcome to do so.
Okay. Yeah, sounds great. Thank you.
Hmm. So I think we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started.
Okay.
Okay, we can get going. Thank you everybody for those that are watching. For those that have never seen this before, this is the live version of my Between Authors podcast that is on my YouTube channel. If you've never seen it, you can go over there. There's probably about 80 indie authors that I've interviewed over the last couple of years that you could find, their work, see things that you probably have never seen before, all different genres. So if you ever get a chance, go over there, check it out. There's a lot of indie authors that a lot of them aren't even on TikTok. They were more from Twitter and some other apps. So, there's probably a lot that you have never seen or never read. But I want to welcome you to the show today, Alexandria. Let's start by, for those that maybe don't know you or don't follow your work currently, why don't you just do a brief introduction of who you are, and we'll talk the writing in the books, as we go through it.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Alexandria Archer. I am an OR nurse and a dark romance author. I have one book that is published called Beneath the Mask, and another one that will be published in the next month called The Past That Binds Us. That is the first of three books. And I'm just excited to be here.
Does the one that's coming out is separate from the Beneath the Mask?
Yes, it is. Beneath the Mask is a
Okay.
standalone, and then I have a three-book series coming out.
So we'll start with the writing side of it. Okay. So
Okay.
what got you into writing, or what got you to make that step of actually putting it out there and publishing it?
I'm somebody that always has needed some sort of creative outlet, whether it's making bracelets and jewelries or hats. I've always needed something to pass my time, and I get bored of a lot of things easily. But I started reading dark romance and absolutely fell in love with it. I found it much more relatable than other books that I've read. And I read a few that were like, this is an okay book. And it challenged me to think, I think I can do that better. And so I came up with an idea and I ran with it and wrote a book during nursing school. And that is my first book that's came out. And I'm in love with the process. I can't get enough of writing.
It's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It is just creating and manifesting entire people and personalities and worlds. It's crazy.
The trilogy that's the first book's going to come out. Is that the same genre? Is that going to be the genre you pretty much stay in, or are you going to kind of go
So
back and
far.
forth?
I'll definitely always, I think, be writing dark romance for now. I don't have any plans to write anything else. And but yeah, I'll mess around with different things like paranormal dark romance. And this book is a murder mystery dark romance. So there's different things within the genre I can play with. But yeah, dark romance is my thing.
Okay, and would you say you are in the I would say not entry level, but the beginning stages of dark romance, or more towards the closer to like the pitch black side of it, or where do you say you fall in that genre?
I think I'm definitely on the darker end of the spectrum. My first book is a little lighter because I was just learning to write and figuring out my voice as a writer and tiptoeing into it. But now that I'm really into it, I think I'm definitely more on the darker end of the
Yeah.
spectrum. So, yeah, I just find it more relatable and I can put my actual life trauma into it and use it as a way to help my readers heal.
Yeah, it's interesting as you start going. You do find yourself going. darker or going deeper into it as you keep writing it and you start getting more comfortable in the
Mm-hmm.
genre or in, like you said, in your voice in the genre.
Yeah, and I have somebody in the comments, Roma, who's actually read some of my books, and she says pitch. So I'll take it from my readers more than my own opinion.
Yeah, I mean that's right down my alley because mine, I guess it would be pitch black as well, but mine actually leans more towards erotic horror because it's
Uh-huh.
actually like a step, probably a step further. It's just
Okay.
it's completely unhinged.
Yeah, I
So
love that.
it's very interesting on the different levels, even within that genre, that you can actually take it.
Yeah, there's a lot of different levels, and you could definitely play around with it, and it's just there's so much room for that.
So why don't let's talk about the first book, Beneath the Mask. Why don't you give an idea what that's about? And again, I always want you to feel comfortable with as much or as little as you're willing to share on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. My first book is called Beneath the Mask. It's a military enemies to lovers dark romance, forbidden love, found family, things like that. But it's inspired by Mask Talk, and the main male character is actually inspired by Ghost from Call of Duty. And it follows, it's all written from the female's perspective as she butts heads with her superior officer. And they go through these trials of life of hating each other, but they hate each other because they're so similar. And what they really hate is what they see in themselves. So it really challenges the reader to see that they're more than their trauma and more than the broken pieces that they have in their life. And so for me, I like to write meaning into my books, a lesson learned, and that is the lesson learned that broken pieces can still add up to a beautiful life if you stop holding them like weapons and start piecing them together.
So on that story, was that something you had thought about for a while? Was that something that just kind of came together? Because, like you said, you were reading and says, "It's not quite what I'm looking for. Let me
Hmm.
try it, or
Hmm.
let me do it." Was that a story that you had kind of in the back, or something that, as you sat down, it just kind of came to you?
It's definitely, I'm more of a fly by the seat of my pants kind of writer. I take inspiration from things around me, and Call of Duty and Ghost is definitely something that was more prevalent in my life during that time. And so I thought that was kind of a spicy thing because he wears a mask, Ghost does in Call of Duty. So my main male character wears a mask, and so there's a lot of room to play with those different elements of mask and military and superior officer. So I just decided to give it a try. And then I started with a spicy scene actually, and then wrote a whole book leading up to it, and then the rest of it.
Yeah, it's that's interesting because that's kind of the way I do it too. It's like
Mhm.
you go with a scene, right? The scene
Mhm.
kind of calls to you as you're writing it, and then from that maybe you go to another scene, and then before
Mhm.
you know it, you're starting to piece it together and building the
Mhm.
story out from there.
That's how my first book was, just as I was playing around, because I didn't know the different types of writing styles either. But now I definitely am somebody who writes beginning to end. I'm not somebody who can skip anymore. I don't know why there is a change in my writing style from the first to the rest of my books, but I'm definitely someone that writes beginning to end now. But my first book was very much like starting with this scene, jumping to the beginning, and yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah, it's probably your normal thought process is probably more structured, and
Mm-hmm.
now as you're into it and you kind of you got your legs under you in terms of your style, your voice and stuff. You
Mm-hmm.
want more of that little structured process is probably how I think because I still go all
Mm-hmm.
over the place, right? I still I
Yeah.
still write sometimes the middle to the end to the front to the back. It's crazy.
Yeah. I love that. Do you feel like it's a little challenging to keep your characters and story straight? Do you have to write out the plot in order to jump around like that?
Not really. I
Okay.
think because my mind works very very compartmentalized in
Okay.
terms of everything I do. Whether it's work or anything, I'm able to section things off,
Mm-hmm.
and it seems to work for me. And for me, it always seems, I don't know if it's the same for you on the first one or this one. it always seems that the story's there. The whole story's there for me. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like I'm dictating the story as I go. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, it's there, right? So even if I start, say, at chapter 14, which winds
Mm-hmm.
up being chapter 14, I
Mm-hmm.
may not know as I'm doing it. I have no problem going to chapter 2 and then going back here because the story's kind of there. It's already in
Okay.
my head as the entire book, and I'm just kind of,
Mm-hmm.
putting it out and structuring it somewhere as
Mm-hmm.
I go through.
For me, I have found that I'm very, I can't, I don't necessarily know the story. I know some main things that are going to happen. I know the story I want to tell, but I don't know what order it happens in. Sometimes things, I found that by trying to write in a structured way or having an outline, it definitely stifled my ability to be
Yeah.
creative, and characters tend to misbehave. And so it doesn't give my characters room to misbehave and guide the story naturally. And when I had an outline, it felt more stiff. Like I was forcing my characters, my story to fit point A, point B, point C that I wanted them to hit. But now that I write more by the seat of my pants, I keep the main points in mind and I just write. And I feel more like I'm a conduit for something, just
Yes.
like I don't know what's happening. I'm just telling the story. And sometimes I don't even know what's going to happen next. I don't know what my characters are going to say. Sometimes they take you by surprise.
Yeah, I mean it's weird because as an author, sometimes you're the first reader because you're kind of
Hmm.
reading it as you go
Yeah.
because it will go on its own. I mean, and that it's an interesting. I've mentioned this before because it's always just the way I felt
Hmm.
is that when you try to structure yourself or be very strict to a structure,
Hmm.
I've always felt that's where writer's block comes in because you're trying to force the story and let it instead of letting the story organically go where it wants to
Hmm.
because it's always going to want to go its own direction no matter what you
Yes.
want to do.
It's
Like you
very much
say,
so.
characters start doing certain things, you're like, wait a minute, that's not really what I had planned, but you go with it, right? You let it
Yeah.
go, and it always seems to be a better version than
Oh, it
what you originally
is.
kind of thought of, right? And
I know.
that's the beauty of that.
Yeah, they have far better ideas than I do. So,
Yes. Did you? So I know you said on this the trilogy you're starting with the book one that's going to be coming out that you're writing a little more structured, right? Or structuring a little more as you go.
mhm.
But have you or you're writing at least in chronological order, right? You're writing
Yes,
from
yeah,
beginning to end.
yes.
But do you still feel that you're just allowing it to come out and just be, just taking dictation as you go?
Yeah, I definitely feel like I'm taking dictation and just letting it flow through me. And sometimes they say things that surprise me and it leads the story naturally in its own way. And I felt like that was much more of a natural way for me to write. And yeah, it's definitely something that can be a challenge sometimes because when you hit that writer's block in that point in your story, I can't move past it to another section because I don't know how they got to that next section. So I don't know how many chapters fall in between point A and B. And by trying to pick up from point C over here when I haven't written point B, I find it very challenging because I don't know how they got there in order to link it all together and keep it in one smooth, cohesive storyline.
Hmm.
So when you hit that writer's block, it very much is a scary thing because you don't know how long that writer's block is going to last before the answer or solution comes to you. And I have been on writer's block for a month or two before the answer suddenly clicks and you're like, of course, that makes complete sense. But sometimes you just never know when it's going to come and it can be kind of terrifying.
Yeah. I mean, do you have any techniques or anything you do when that does come? Is there anything you try to do to not alleviate, but maybe reduce some of the block?
I found that by simply stepping away and giving my brain a break and actually letting myself rest and have that hiatus from writing, I'm able to think more clearly about the story. And I can come back in and I can reread what I have written and see it from a more external perspective rather than being in the midst of it when you're writing. Sometimes
Yeah.
you're dug in there to point these tiny little minutiaes, but when you step back and then come back in and read it from beginning to end, you can see how it flows. And sometimes that can help inspire you to take those next steps and say, okay, I see how this is going to flow more naturally now that I've relooked at the whole story altogether.
Yeah, it's interesting, different authors the way they approach it, or how they can try to get out of it or get around it.
Hmm.
One of the things that always helped me for the most part is writing something else, right? Even if it's a
Okay.
poem or writing a scene, just something small. It's
Hmm.
that little bit of a reset that really seems to help sometimes, right? So,
Yeah.
I write a lot of genres. I do children's books,
Yeah.
horror, the
Hmm.
erotic horror.
Hmm.
I did some Christmas slasher stuff as well. So
Fun.
it seems to help me because I can bounce back and forth, which
Hmm.
a lot of people always ask me how, but I guess again because I could compartmentalize things. But I can write part of my children's book and then hop into
Hmm.
my horror book and then go into the erotic horror stuff,
That's
and it
impressive.
seems to keep it fresh because I can kind of bounce around and you don't get stuck trying to get that story out.
Hmm.
It works for me. Again, it's never going to work for everybody. That's just something I do. It's that little
Uh-huh.
reset that seems to help.
And that is one I have heard before of just trying to write something else. And that's not one I have tried before, but I definitely need to give it a go. I need to take that chance of just continue writing, even if it's something completely different, even if it's a short story. Just keep yourself writing, keep the wheels turning and stuff. So that is one I definitely need to try next time I hit a writer's block. And it's very impressive that you have the ability to jump from different genre and different books because that would just I'd feel like I would get them all confused and crisscrossed and stuff. So well done to you.
Yeah, thank you. It's I don't know why it's come easy to me to be able to do it,
Hmm.
but it is kind of everybody's always saying, I can't imagine you writing children's books when they've
Hmm.
read, my Unholy Queen collection. They're like, I can't see that other side, but it's just, you just separate it. It's just
Uh-huh.
complete, again, I kind of have the stories in my head, so I can just roll with the stories as I go. But yeah, it's
That's
it's not for
fantastic.
everybody.
That's fantastic. That's a great skill to have, and I think you're utilizing it very well by writing different genres. That's a great way to use that compartmentalization skill.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've just chatted a couple of times, but I don't know if you've ever seen any of my stuff. A lot of my stuff is very female centered
Hmm.
because I always want to write strong female characters because,
I
I
appreciate
mentioned
that.
this. I come from a family that's all sisters, all nieces on my side. And my writing journey started when my wife and I lost our daughter during the pregnancy. And that's when
Okay.
I started writing the children's books and stuff on that side. So a
Okay.
lot of my stuff is very female centered. I always want the
Hmm.
female to be the main character. So all of my, pitch black or erotic horror books,
Hmm.
that's why it's called the Unholy Queens. It's all female centered and
Hmm.
they are the main character. They're the ones always in control. They're the
Hmm.
ones doing all the crazy unhinged stuff that you can think of. And it's just I love it. I love doing it and I love taking that approach.
I definitely need to check out your books. That sounds absolutely fantastic. I've definitely read some books out there where the female is like the weak one or the helpless one. And as somebody who's had to do a lot of things to survive, you find that women are much stronger than we're given credit for at times. And you see a lot of the weak female. It tends to drive me crazy because I'm not. And I'm actually somebody who grew up with all brothers. So I was
Yeah.
more of a tomboy growing up. So my experience is that anything you can do, I can do better kind of mindset. It's a competition, it's a challenge. If you can do that, I want to do that too. So that's why I tend to write strong female leads who have this mindset of I don't need you in my life. I
Yeah.
can do it myself. And then you form, love out of that and learn how to trust and love another person. But I love a good strong female.
Yeah. Yeah, mine are completely unhinged and it's like female rage to the 30th power.
I
It's just
love
it's
that.
just completely unleashed.
I love
High
that.
Spicy Book Queen. If you've never read Alexandria stuff, her book sounds like it's right up your alley. So let's talk about the trilogy, right? And again, you share only as much as you want to, because I know book one's still coming out. So
Uh-huh.
however you want to do it, if you want to
Mhm.
give kind of an overall
Sure.
theme of what the trilogy is going to be about,
Mhm.
or focus on book one, whatever you're comfortable with on that side.
So it is a series called The Unraveling. It follows a CSI agent named Tiffany and an FBI agent named Henry as they solve a series of brutal unalivings. And she can't stand him. She's got black cat energy, and then he is kind of fascinated by her, kind of interested in her as in a playboy kind of way because he doesn't take anything seriously. And but she challenges him to care about things, and he challenges her to open up and be more trusting. And they both have these dark pasts that they're hiding from each other, but they're both so sharp that they see past all the facades and lies that they put up and all the masks that they wear. And so they really challenge each other while they're trying to solve these serial unalivings. And it's really it's a psychological thriller, murder mystery. It's very twisty, turny. You never kind of see the ending coming. I love those kind of books, so that's the type I try to write. And then just when you think it's over, the story continues in book two, but it's so much worse. And so you definitely, with a series, you have to up the ante in book two. And book two does not end happy. So that's all I'll say for that one. And then the third one is really the redemption story, and the redemption of the characters is what I'll say is going to happen in book three. So yeah.
It's interesting. The beauty of being an indie author, right, is that you can end it on a non-happy ending,
Yeah.
because generally they always want you to try to try to bring it back for
Yeah.
the readers or so. But there's I love that. I've always loved a non-happy ending,
Hmm.
because I love Japanese cinema, and anybody who's watched
Okay.
Japanese cinema knows there is no
Mhm.
happy endings in almost any of their movies, right? Everybody is kind of screwed in
Yeah.
Japanese cinema. Even when
Reflects
you think
reality,
it's going the right way, it's not, right? So
right?
I've always just kind of loved that, because it comes out of left field, right? It's not
It
something you
does.
expect. You
Yeah.
kind of do expect something to happen. You're like, it's not, right? I'm not going to
Yeah.
give you that. This is what you're going to get instead.
Yeah, we're spoon-fed Disney movies where they go through the struggles and they come out victorious. The bad guy loses, the good guy wins, and that's just not reflective of what reality actually looks like because
No.
the good don't win all the time and the bad are triumphant all the time. And those kind of stories where they don't end on a happy note are actually much more realistic and relatable for people as well. And so while it doesn't give you the feel goods like the Disney movie happy endings, it's much more relatable.
Hmm. And I talk about this every once in a while on the podcast. It's really representation, right? And
Hmm.
when you do have stuff that is more relatable,
Hmm.
and stuff that people can, feel, understand, like, everything I've done, I still don't get that happy ending. It still hasn't kind of come.
Yeah.
It kind of builds that connection for the reader, because it does, like you say, it feels more realistic. This
Hmm.
is what I know. I don't know the Prince Charming, the castle, the happy forever after. This
Hmm.
is more what I know, and then that connection just gets stronger for the reader to your
Hmm.
story.
Yeah, absolutely. I That's one of the reasons that I was so drawn to dark romance is because I myself have been through so many different types of traumas, and it took me years to heal from those things. And so not only is writing a form of therapy, but it's a way for
Yeah.
me to actually share my story indirectly and help other people who have been through similar things find healing through reading my books. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about dark romance. Like it's nitty gritty and dark, and there's
Yeah.
some pretty hard topics, but life's got some hard topics in it that you got to shine some light on and acknowledge the elephant in the room that those things are actually happening in the real world. I actually forgot to say this in my introduction, but I'm starting an online dark romance bookstore for people. So that's how passionate I am about it, that I'm actually creating a whole bookstore so dark romance readers can find books that they actually are interested in.
Yeah, I actually have that as a note. I was going to make sure we brought
Oh,
it up for you.
okay.
And I think you have on your profile a GoFundMe for it,
Yes.
to help get help get it started and
Yes.
everything. Why don't you explain a little more about what your what your thought process is for what
Mhm.
that's going to be, or
Mhm.
technically how it
Absolutely.
will work?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's currently the website's being built. I have all the licenses and permits and everything. Everything is built. The company is ready, but nothing moves without the financing. But so what the company is going to be is it's going to be an online dark romance bookstore where people can come and they can look up books that are going to be only dark romance. They can find them, they can search for them by their different tropes, reverse harem, enemies to lovers, and they can look up topics that they're actually interested in reading about and find books that are actually linked to that subject. It's also going to offer hopefully special edition books, signed copies, things like that. I also want to support indie authors because I myself am an indie author, so it gives indie authors a platform to showcase their work. And then it'll also include merchandise that I've actually created myself. I've been making shirts and things like that, which are so fun. Dark romance themed shirts are just make me happy. But
Yes.
and then I'll also do book boxes that are every monthly one is a different trope type of theme. So you can get one based on different trope, or it has special edition boxes every quarter, I think it is, that are special themes like, a witch book one, or haunted mansion theme, or summer solstice. So it's just going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really excited. So, but because it's in the fundraising stage, it definitely can't move until I raise those things up. So that is the stage that I'm in right now.
Okay. Well, if you ever need any, books, signed books, whatever going forward, let me know. I'm always
Yeah,
willing to get in there when I can. So if you have
absolutely.
a section for completely unhinged, super pitch black stories, then I'm here. I
Yeah,
have enough.
absolutely. I'll make the category for that because we definitely need more of that in the world.
Yeah, my
Um,
just so you know, my entire collection is that, right? It's gonna the
mhm,
entire Unholy Queens are all gonna be really pitch black, more erotic horror.
mhm.
There's a lot of horror elements in it,
Yeah,
um, and just as spicy as they come in terms of that site. So
love
if you
it.
need to make the genre, you'll have a lot of books from me coming for that.
Love that. Absolutely. Roma in the comments is asking how much do you still have on the GoFundMe? I have raised 450. My goal to be completely comfortable and ready to launch is 10 to 15,000. I do plan on doing a pre-launch of the book boxes at around 2,000. So it's just getting to that initial point of the book launch and getting the name out there. I've also created a dark romance Discord to kind of start collecting people who are passionate about it and helping get the word out about it. So just doing every bit I can to market and put my name out there.
Yeah, definitely. As you go forward, tag me every time you do post for that, and I'll make sure I keep getting it out there so we can,
Thank
get the word
you.
out more for you to get it built up.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So as let's go back a little more toward the books here, and then
Okay.
we can touch back if anybody has
No, I'd be
questions in
happy to talk
terms
about
of
that.
the bookstore. Definitely ask Alexandria so she can go over it.
Yeah.
But in terms of the trilogy, right, or
Hmm.
even from the first one to the trilogy,
Hmm.
how it's an interesting question, but how comfortable were you right away in terms of the dark, spicy scenes? Did you
Hmm.
find yourself easily going to them? Did you find yourself building up? Because you said your stuff has gotten darker. So
Hmm.
did you find yourself getting more comfortable with the elements and stuff? Because, to be honest, when you write this, some of
Hmm.
those elements are pretty rough. I mean, as you do them,
Yeah.
you're like, I there's a couple of times I've said I may have gone too far, so I need somebody to read this to make sure, yes, it is too far, but at least people are going to accept it for what it
Right.
is.
Yeah. It definitely took a little bit of adjusting. I was initially getting comfortable with my first book, Beneath the Mask. I actually wrote two other books that I put on the back burner because I just feel like they're missing something, they're not quite ready. And then I moved on to starting this series. And I grew up watching CSI Las Vegas, and I absolutely love a good murder documentary. I love CSI shows, absolutely, crime solving. So that's kind of my bread and butter with this. And so I felt really comfortable writing those kind of details. When it came to the spice, it definitely wasn't something I started out being comfortable with book one. But I think because I wrote two other books that I definitely started diving deeper and deeper into spicy level, it made me more comfortable. And with these books, I also increase the spice level throughout them, and it gets more challenging or more dominating, or, definitely ups the ante every time. I did get challenged with the first book because there is a scene that is very aggressive towards a woman. And that one, I have had readers say they had to stop for a bit because it hit close to home. And but I felt challenged by that scene, but I've grown from that one. And in this second book that I'm currently writing, I'm actually almost done writing the second book. I actually included chapters that were written from the perspective of the killer. And so trying to get in the mindset of the actual, killer was very challenging because it's very dark and you have to think like them. And then there's a scene actually where you actually are reading the chapter from the perspective of the killer as he is doing that to somebody. And it's a very brutal, it's a very gory, grotesque type
Yeah.
of scene. So I had that one also challenged me to step back and be like, am I okay? Like, do I need help? Do I need therapy? Maybe. But I know the third book is going to be the most challenging because the the killer continues on in this next book, and it is so much worse and
Yeah.
in a different way. And it's going to be very challenging to do that to my characters that I love so much. And also to do that and be in that mindset is going to be challenging. But the more we do, the more we grow and the more comfortable we
Yeah.
get with those things. So,
Yeah. The more you do anything, the better you get at it, right? I mean, that's
yeah.
just the way life works in general.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm on the other side because every character in my book is horrible, right? There's no there's no good characters. The
Yeah.
poor good characters that kind of show up are really the victims. There's no good characters in my
Yeah.
book. There's nobody with any redeeming qualities ever. It's
Okay.
just everybody's either different levels of
Interesting.
horrible or unhinged.
I
Um,
definitely need to check out your books. It sounds like something I'm very interested in reading.
they are crazy. They really are. Because I took it, I did it differently. You're coming from a CSI approach.
Hmm.
I'm a huge horror lover, right?
Hmm.
That's my core, and I love all horror from the old Universal to the
Hmm.
'70s Hammer to all the new stuff, right? So
Yeah.
mine are all a mixture of paranormal or
Hmm.
monster, or
Hmm.
they're just it's just bad, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing there's no all the scenes, the unalivings, everything's unhinged and over the top because of what the
Hmm.
characters are, right? My
Yeah.
first book, she was a succubus demon,
Hmm.
and her lover was a serial unaliver. My
Hmm.
second book was the vampire queen, the vampire empress, and her coven and daughters. So they all, I like to make sure the characters are do what they would do, right? They're
Yeah.
completely they're monsters. They're not going to hold back. They're not going to worry about anything. They're just going to
Hmm.
do what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And it's helped get in that mindset and write some of those scenes that are, you know, over the top.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's very challenging to find out what you're capable of as a writer too. And you learn as you go along that there's more and more things you're capable of that you never knew when you first started. And you don't find out until you're knee deep in the middle of it writing it. And you're like, I didn't know I could write like that. I didn't know I could take on that kind of scene sometimes.
Yeah. It really goes back to, I we talk always about the author's voice, right? What
Hmm.
your voice is and
Hmm.
finding your voice as you're going. But
Hmm.
really what your voice is your foundation, right? I don't always want to lean it towards upbringing, but it's more your
Yeah.
foundation in terms of what you like. You said you like CSI, right? I
Yeah.
like horror.
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of just completely terrible documentaries on serial killers and just brutal, ugly stuff. So that foundation helps write some of those scenes, even
Hmm.
though that's not who I am, right? That I would
Yeah.
never even get close to doing something like that. But that it's that foundation that helps you, right? And that's
Hmm.
sometimes what you lean on is that's what makes your voice. It's all those different little things that you kind of grew up watching, reading, loving
Yeah.
that builds that, right? And builds
Hmm.
who you are, which really goes back to why there should never be any competition between authors because
Yeah.
essentially, two authors could write the same, not the same story, but the same concept, and they'll
Yeah.
be completely different, right? And that's
Oh yeah.
that's the beauty of this is that there shouldn't be competition. It's never going to be the same
Hmm.
story. It's never. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is something that is so amazing of how creative the mind can be, that two people can see the same thing and see completely different angles to the same story and tell a different story in a different way. There's just so much room for us as authors in this that to see each other as competition or a challenge is just silly, because we're all different. We're all telling different stories in our own way, and we're doing it with
Mhm.
our own experiences and our past and the lessons we've learned through life, and it really makes each story unique.
Yep, absolutely. And that's again, that's why I do this. I mean, I do everything I can to support indie authors, even book talkers, because
Hmm.
at the end of the day, you said you're an OR nurse. We all have jobs. We're all busy, and we're doing this
Yeah.
because we love it.
Yeah.
In whatever little free time we have, whether
Yeah.
it's writing or marketing or whatever we got to do, it's because we love it, right? And that's
Yeah.
why I try to support everybody because I know that. I know we're all doing
Hmm.
this because we love it. I know we're putting in the extra work above and
Yeah.
beyond what our normal job is. And,
Hmm.
they're all passion projects for us. So I
Yeah.
always do whatever I can to support as many as I can for that reason,
Hmm.
because I understand what the struggle is.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all in this together.
So, you talked a little bit about you had two other books. You have the one out, Beneath the Mask. You have the
Hmm.
trilogy coming out, or
Hmm.
book one, at least, of the trilogy coming out.
Hmm.
So, one of the questions I always like to ask is, you have, or any of us have, our favorite genres, right? Whether it's what we read or write mostly. Is there
Hmm.
another genre at some point that you were like, I really want to tackle this at some point, or at least aspects of it? Because
Hmm.
in almost any book, there's multiple genres, right? There's never 100% this, right? Like yours
Yeah.
is dark romance with
Hmm.
criminal thriller in it.
Hmm.
It's never going to be one genre, right? So,
Yeah.
is there something that at some point in your author career, maybe not now, maybe further down the line,
Hmm.
a genre that you're like, I really would like to attempt this at one point?
I would say I definitely have an interest in the paranormal aspect, whether that be ghosts, demons, or vampires as a place that holds a special, a subject that holds a special place in my heart. But if I would say I would still love to stick with like a psychological thriller or murder mysteries, even if you take the dark romance element out of it and just make it about the murder mystery or the psychological thriller. I love books that give me twists and turns and leave me confused and wondering, okay, who is this person? Or, those surprise plot twists that just take your breath away. I love those so much. And I think those make books so much more interesting and engaging and, sitting on the edge of your seat kind of intensity. And I find that in psychological thrillers and murder mysteries. So I would say I would stick with that because that's just what I love, and maybe do it with like vampires or, paranormal. So I would definitely be able to take the romance side out of it, but I think I would still stick closer to home to what I know and what I love.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've thought about that as well. What else I would do.
Hmm.
I don't, and as much as I love it, I love sci-fi, I love
Hmm.
fantasy, right? It's
Yeah.
again what I grew up on
Hmm.
watching, reading, but
Hmm.
I don't think it would ever be a genre I would write because
Hmm.
to do it justice, you have to do the world building, right? You
Yeah.
have to have that built out.
Can't do
And
it.
I just don't think I have the patience to do that
I
because
don't.
at any given time I'm writing 8 different books
I
at once,
know.
right? So I don't do it. Quickly, Alexandria, Nikki, hi Nikki, wants to know where she can find your books.
My books are available on Amazon, Kindle Unlimited, as well as the Barnes& and Noble website.
And Nikki, her books are pitch black like mine, so you'll love it.
And the Audible for my first book is coming out end of this month. So you'll find me on Audible too soon.
Perfect. So, it's that would be interesting taking going for a vampire approach as a thriller, as a crime mystery, right? It
Hmm.
would be, I mean, not exactly, but it'd be like a an adult pitch black Scooby Doo type of story, right? Where you have the paranormal, you have the mystery.
Hmm.
You're not gonna have a talking dog or anything, but or
No.
the ugly bus. But I mean, you could take that approach of
Mhm.
having that paranormal in it with the murder mystery or the thriller part of it,
Mhm.
and it'd be an interesting approach to go at.
Yeah. And my mind initially goes to inspiration from movies like The Underworld, where it has that dark
Yeah,
feel to it, very cloudy, gray, rainy. That's the kind of vibe I would definitely want to manifest in my book and have the readers feel, because that's kind of the gloomy underworld and underbelly to vampires, especially if you put them in a modern world. You definitely have to have realistic elements for them in the modern world if you're going for modern. And so, um, but I definitely see like the twists and turns of like Underworld, where there's, like in the first movie where the werewolves have someone that they're trying to hunt down who is like they're in between their ancestor or whatever like that. So I feel like there's a lot of room to play with and try out new ideas, essentially.
yeah, yeah. Underworld is a great storyline or
Mhm.
approach for any of that, right? They did a very
Mhm.
good job of mixing those things together,
Yeah.
with some of the ones being a little more on the gothic side, some of them being a
Hmm.
little more modern.
Hmm.
Blade One was a good one in terms of taking it modern
Hmm.
before they kind of went crazy and off, off the rail. But
Yeah.
it's a good approach to take it that way, and it's interesting. So when you approach that, say you approach vampires or any of those that side,
Hmm.
how do you feel you're going to approach it? Because one of the things I've always wanted to do, again because of horror,
Hmm.
is I wanted always to make sure they understood the monsters were monsters, right?
Yeah.
And it seems too much they take that out of the equation a lot of times in some of the newer stories
Hmm.
where you have all the stuff around, right? Even when you look at Underworld, where you have the whole aspect in the back where the upper class and they're going around and they're
Hmm.
living it up, and then you have the werewolves that are kind of slumming it on the other side, which for me is always because I love the werewolf character and I was always like they never get any respect, right? It's
Yeah.
horrible,
They're
the
just
poor werewolves on
dogs.
that side. I know, but uh where do you feel you would take it? Would you want to make sure that you still have that monster side of it, or are you going to kind of balance it between the two?
I think that I wouldn't want to humanize the characters and make them relatable and like, oh, they're just misunderstood creatures. No, these are blood-sucking, they're
Yeah,
killers, and I
yeah,
would want to maintain some of that feral element to them and really give them that fear and that animalistic side to be like, these are actually terrifying, powerful creatures that are capable of mass destruction and mass, unalivings, they're doing terrible things. And so I would want to stick with maintaining that element in my book of like these are terrible creatures. Or I'm not trying to humanize them and make them relatable.
Yeah, see, and I love that. I love that approach to these characters.
Hmm.
I mean, I always say that there's far too often where the vampires are always just like gigolos and just going ever. I was like, these guys are going to eat everybody or kill or sorry, unalive everybody that's in
I know.
the room, right?
Hmm.
And I always kind of like just take it back to where it should be.
Hmm.
You can have all the other stuff, right? You can
Hmm.
have all the spice, all the romance, all of
Hmm.
the central part of it.
Hmm.
But in the core, you should be back to
Hmm.
they're just going to take you out when they're ready.
I mean, I would even play with the idea that blood is a catalyst for interactions of the romantic type, because there's something so vital about blood, it's a life force, and there's something so romantic and central about that idea. I think there's a lot of room to play with that concept of using blood.
Yeah. Yeah, I used it somewhat in the my Crimson Empress, which is the vampire one.
Hmm.
I do use it somewhat in there with the aspect of the blood bond
Okay.
and why some of the feelings happen and why some of the situations come up because it's the ultimate enemies to lovers because it was a
Love
vampire
it.
hunter and the vampire queen,
Uh-huh.
right? And so I was like, you can't get more polar opposites than that.
Right?
So what can I do to bring them together? Because you got just complete hatred that has to
Hmm.
switch at some point. So there has to be a reason for that to happen, right? So I
Yeah.
touched on it a little, but there's so much you can do on
Hmm.
that side of it or in that aspect that is very interesting.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely the book that I would go to next if I were to go into any other thing. I think it would be something along vampires in the paranormal world. I think that'd be really interesting to try.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be pretty interesting actually. The way you're saying you're going to approach it that would be pretty interesting actually. The way you're saying you're going to approach it would be a pretty good read.
Thank you. I
You know,
appreciate that.
it's interesting. It's interesting when you start mixing your likes or
Hmm.
genres that you appreciate, right? And
Hmm.
I I probably do that a lot because I just came up with my what I'm calling my spicy John Wick, right? Which is basically going to be my way to just put as much carnage as I can in the story
I
with
love
with the
that.
John Wick aspect of it, but then
Hmm.
have all the spice that goes with it,
Yes.
because of what the character or who he is, right? So
Oh my gosh,
that's
yeah.
one thing I did. I had
John
another
Wick
one
with
because I
spice? Oh my gosh.
yes, yeah, I got to say, what one of the questions I was going to ask you
Hmm.
is, as an indie author, do you have and I'm not talking about beta readers or
Okay.
arc readers. Do you have people or somebody that you send scenes to or send pieces to that you can feel out, right? How does
Hmm.
this sound or how does this scene work to you? You can feel out, right? How
Hmm.
does this sound or how does this scene work to you?
Hmm.
Do you have that? Because I've found that it's really really helpful to have
Hmm.
those voices that you can go to and say,
Hmm.
you know, is this scene too much and should I cut it back a little or what do you think?
I have people that I could potentially send those to, but I think most of them are either not in the genre interest or they are people who are just fans who absolutely love my
Yeah.
writing. And so they're just going to be like, yeah, it looks great. I love it. And it's like, I want you to love it, but I want to be challenged as well. I want you to give me feedback and tell me like, okay, this could be improved or this. So I have a couple people I could send something to, but I think they're more of the people who just are going to read it and just love it. So I'm actually at this point at the end of my story where I'm like, this is getting so intense and like I want to talk to somebody about it. Or like when I wrote the scene from the unaliver's perspective and it was just like that was a little far. I mean, I need someone to read this and tell me if I need help or not, So
Yeah.
I definitely feel like I'm more on my own when it comes to that kind of thing. So
You should really try to find a couple that you can do that with, because
True.
I've really felt that it really helps the process, right? It really helps you
Mhm.
really get into it because I have a couple that who have read my books, who have read like Camila, the succubus one, and then Alondra,
Mhm.
the vampire one, so
Mhm.
they know how dark and how just unhinged it is.
Yeah.
So I'm writing the Medusa one right now. So there was a scene I was like, I may have gone too far on the scene. So I was like, I need a couple of people, and I sent it out. I need some to read it. Spicy Book Queen was one of them.
Hmm.
Like, is this too far? Right? Even with the trigger warnings and everything, is it too far? Because
Right.
even I questioned myself and says,
Hmm.
I don't know if I
Hmm.
should cut this back or not. And it really does help.
Yeah, and that is definitely something I can pursue because there are times where I I get concerned when I go darker if I am crossing into a different genre of horror, and not staying true to just a normal dark romance book with dark elements in it. Because there's pitch black dark romance, and then you have things like horror, which is kind of a different element. It takes
Yeah.
things to much more extreme. So it's when it's trying to feel out where that line is of going pitch black versus crossing into horror, which is not something that the reader signed up for. So I feel like I tiptoe with, where is that line right now?
Yeah. Kind of where it's gonna go and which direction they're headed.
Well, at least they're prepared. They know what they're getting into. They made their
they're
choice.
they're they're still not prepared when they read the next book. I mean, it still goes a different direction every time.
I love that.
So, is there anything else that you want to kind of let the viewers know, or kind of let them know about your writing, about your process, or stuff that's coming up that you're kind of excited about? And again, if it's something you're not ready to share, I don't want you to. But if there's anything else you kind of want to bring up, to just let the viewers know, because really the reason I love doing this with indie
Hmm.
authors is really goes back to the connection to the reader, right? And
Hmm.
I feel that when you do this, and the readers or viewers can see who you are, right? Or why you wrote, why
Hmm.
you continue to write,
Hmm.
or really what's the process behind your stories. I think
Hmm.
that connection really builds even more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for those of you who maybe weren't around in the beginning or missed anything, I'm somebody who I write dark romance because of the trauma, and I do that because I myself have been through a lot of different types of trauma, and I my heart is in helping my readers find healing from the trauma in their own lives as I break and heal my own characters. And it's also a way of therapy for me to, it's like talk therapy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit like talk therapy. So, um, I fell in love with dark romance and I want to bring dark romance to other people because I want them to find healing. And so, writing is become a huge passion of mine. I never started out thinking I'd ever be a writer. It's not something that ever crossed my mind. I was good at writing in school, but you never write anything you want in school. But so, um, I fell in love with it, and my heart is to challenge myself as a writer and try new things and try new elements and take it darker and take it into spicier places or more challenging places and really find stories that relate to the readers because I mean, you're our bread and butter. You're what power us, you're what keep us going. So,
Yeah.
um yeah, so and again, I am starting that dark romance bookstore, and I've got a dark romance Discord that I've got. So if you're interested in joining the dark romance Discord, we talk about dark romance books and do book recommendations and stuff. So you're always welcome to join. We'd love to have you as long as you're over 18.
Yeah. I
Um,
joined the Discord. I'm on the Discord. It's just my problem is I never have any time to join anything or talk.
no worries. Yeah, I barely do anymore either, so I understand. But yeah, I mean, I that's the gist of me, and I hope I can continue to keep my readers on their toes.
Yeah. And then for you, Alexandria, I will offer for you. if you ever have the horror side of it,
Hmm.
where you're really going over that edge, feel free to send it to me if you want me to read through it
Okay.
and just give you that feedback
Sure.
if you're not sure if you've gone too far. Because I've already had at some point, right? So I can tell you, okay, I think you're okay. You're good on that side of it.
Are
So
you
always
sure?
feel
Because
free
I
to
feel
do
like you're
that.
going to be the person who's be like, no, you're good. And other people
Yeah.
would be like, I don't know, I don't know.
They're like, what is wrong with her? I was like, it was perfect.
Yep, that sounded good. You could go worse. Do worse.
Yeah. Yeah, but definitely, feel free to do that if you ever have something you're on the fence with. I'll definitely help you out on that side. I never, it's not something I enjoy, but I never have any time to read any actual books, right?
Oh,
I
yeah.
just don't. I have
Me either.
too many things I'm writing, right? There's
Yeah.
just regular work. It's hard,
Hmm.
right? It's very
It
difficult
is.
to balance it all. And, I wish I could, but,
Yeah.
you just can't. I got too many
Mhm.
things in the mix. And like I was explaining, I'm writing them all at the same time, right? I'm writing
Yeah.
chapters here, that I hop to this book, that I go to this
Yeah.
book.
That's
So
wild.
it's hard. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
It
hard.
is. Yeah. Completely agree. I'll definitely have to reach out to you sometime. We definitely need to stay in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, for those that have joined a little bit later or missed the beginning, this is the live version of my Between Authors podcast. I will download this entire live and I will load it up on my YouTube channel.
Hmm.
And I'll share the link again, tag Alexandria, and we can get it out there. So if you missed any part of this, you'll be able to catch it on the replay. Or if you wanted to watch again, if you missed names of some of the books or something on that side, you'll be able to do that. When I do post that up to Alexandria, I usually in the description I'll put whatever links you want me to put.
Hmm.
So if you want to send me at some point just what you want to be in there,
Sure.
like it could be the link tree, it could be specific links. So if you
Okay.
want to do a specific one, say for like the bookstore for the
Yeah.
GoFundMe, well,
Yeah.
I'll definitely do that for you as well, so we get it out there.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I do appreciate you joining today. I appreciate being able to talk with you,
Thank you.
and getting to know you a little better and what you write and everything. And I appreciate all the viewers always
Hmm.
for checking in and watching this. And if anybody out there knows other authors that are interested in it,
Hmm.
it's in my profile. You can sign up, and we'll figure out times. The only challenge I always have for everybody is I'm on the West Coast, so by the time I get home, most of you guys are either getting ready for bed or putting the kids to bed or something. So it's a little challenge to always be able to find time slots, but we'll figure it out. But
Yep.
thank you again, Alexandria. I really do appreciate you
Yep.
coming on, and thank you everybody else for
Absolutely.
watching today.
Thank you for having me. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.